Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Fantasy Basketball Podcast. That's all I'm calling it right now. It's just Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Doesn't have a special name or title yet. I'm your host, Tim Ghiorso, and also Co Commissioner, along with Blake Richardson, of our Fantasy Basketball League named the Derrick Rose Infirmary. Let me say that again. Derrick Rose Infirmary. As you know, Derrick Rose, always injured. So that's our league name. And our two divisions are day to day, and I can't remember the other one, out for the year, day to day. Because that's typically where Derrick Rose is usually at. It's usually one of those two things. Now he's a free agent now. He can sign with whoever he wants. Maybe even the Timberwolves, it's rumored. But we will get into that later on in the show. I wanted to start off first by just mentioning how much fun the trade deadline is in the NBA. Just such a fun thing. And I woke up Thursday morning knowing that the deadline was at 12 p.m. And I made sure I didn't get scheduled for work that morning because I knew I wanted to be able to see every move that was coming in, just constantly refreshing Twitter because that's pretty much the fastest way you're going to see anything. And I'm laying in my bed and I have my TV on. I'm watching ESPN The Jump, and they're kind of doing a live show. I have my iPad in my hand, and I'm constantly refreshing Twitter every 10 seconds. I'm getting annoyed when I refresh and nothing new pops up. I'm like, oh, come on, let's go. Come on, I want to see. And then on the other hand, I have in my right hand, I've got my phone, and I'm texting Miguel and Blake because we have a little group that we text back and forth in about basketball stuff. And I'm texting Big Mike, breaking down trades. So I'm just working like these three devices. I'm looking up and watch TV for a little bit. I'm looking down at my iPad. I'm refreshing my Twitter. Now I'm on my phone texting everyone about what I'm hearing and seeing. And it's really fun. It's a little bit stressful because the way our waiver system works, you just go out and pick somebody up, right? So that's the only stressful part is I felt like I almost had to pay constant attention because let's say a big move goes down where I don't know. I'm trying to think of something right off the top of my head. Let's say like the Knicks trade away Enes Kanter and Kyle O'Quinn in a deal. Now all of a sudden Willie Hernan-Gomez could be seeing 25 to 30 minutes. I'm going to go, boom. DJ Augustine. There's a perfect one. Elfrid Payton gets traded to the Suns. Now DJ Augustine is now going to get 35, 40 minutes a game. So I wanted to get all the news as fast as possible, and one of the reasons was so I could make any pickups that needed to be done. Hopefully in the future we have a waiver system where the waivers would go through at the end of the day and you'd have a certain allotment of fab money, you could call it, a free agent budget, and you would basically, okay, I want to pick up DJ Augustine. Okay, I think he's going to be pretty good. I'm gonna put in five of my fab dollars, right? And hope that that's enough. Hope that I outbid everybody. And then somebody else, on the other hand, they're like, ooh, Augustine, I think he's worth about 3 to me. And they're going to throw out 3 fab dollars. When that waiver goes through at the end of the day, you get DJ Augustine because you put in 5, the other person only put in 3. So hopefully in the future we have that system so that way there's not such an urgency to have to be on top of every news item in order to get that pickup right away. I think to me that would be a little bit more fair because I know that Miguel, as we were texting, he was in the middle of a meeting at his work and was like, dude, I just walked out of the meeting because I saw Isaiah Thomas trade. I had to find out, and so it obviously is going to help out people who are busy during the day. Eventually I'd love to hang out with some of you guys on trade deadline day and see if we can get a little group together just to hang out and watch the jump and just be checking Twitter and so I wouldn't have to be texting all you guys. I could just be hanging out and watching with you. Obviously, it's tough because it was a weekday. It wasn't a weekend. They should make it a weekend thing. That way, it's almost a similar thing to a Super Bowl type feel where you just get together and you hover around your devices and a TV and you discuss every trade that breaks through or every rumor that pops up. So-and-so's rumored to go here. Tyreek Evans, the Sixers want him. This other team wants him. So I think that'd be fun to do in the future. Those two things. But surprisingly, not a lot of trades had a lot of fantasy value. But again, I'll get into that towards the end of the show. right now, I just wanted to actually break down our current standings in our fantasy season, which I have up here right now. Don't want to toot my own horn here too much, but I'm in first place. And I mean, I kind of expect that of myself just because I do write for a fantasy basketball website. So, I mean, I would hope that due to that being part of my job, I would tend to be higher in the standings most of the time. Obviously, you never know what can happen. I mean, I've missed the playoffs some years in fantasy, injuries or whatever. But I would hope to be in the top most of the time, considering I have to be pretty knowledgeable to be good at my job, which is blurbing all these different players. And again, if you want to ever read my blurbs, go to hoop-ball.com. Tuesdays between 9 and 1 and Wednesdays between 9 and 1. And you can also go back later in the day and you can go back and see the ones that I blurbed if you're ever interested. You can critique my writing, critique my blurbs a little bit if you think I was off on something. It's actually kind of funny. I don't know if you'll ever listen to this, but it was funny. I kind of got into a slight heated exchange with Aaron Brewski because he was really high on Rashawn Holmes, the guy from the Sixers, because it was like his kind of fantasy darling from last year, who he was the guy that kind of saw Rashawn Holmes needs to be added, and obviously he did really well last year. And I did a blurb on him, and I just didn't see it. I was thinking, man, as long as Embiid stays healthy, they've got Amir Johnson already there. I just could not. You know, Ben Simmons plays power forward a lot when they go a little bigger and have McConnell play point guard. I was thinking, I just don't see him having enough opportunity to be relevant. And I blurbed that, and he was kind of angry. He actually he told me to change the blurb to tell everyone Rashawn Holmes was a must-add player, because we try to be on the site. We try to be pretty on the same page. You know, we don't want to have one writer writing, you know, Marquise Chris is terrible, and then 5 minutes later when the next guy comes on does a blurb about Marquise Chris is a must-own, right? That's going to confuse people. So we try to be on the most part on the same page with things. So if someone's analysis is really out of whack, then we'll be like, hey, maybe, you know, change it, make it a little bit more even, a little less one-sided. So that was one of those situations where he was really such a big believer in Rashawn Holmes, and I kind of thought it was more of an emotional thing because, again, it was his darling from last year, and I felt maybe he was a little bit too emotionally attached to Rashawn, and that's where maybe the him needing to be a must-own type player was coming from. Granted, that was before they traded for Trevor Booker, which pretty much killed any value Rashawn could have had. He actually still could have had potentially decent value, maybe 15 to 20 minutes a game, if not for that trade for Trevor Booker. So he could have been right in the fact that Rashawn, he's the type of player that can still be pretty valuable even in limited minutes. So, but I always think that was kind of a funny story where I kind of was like, hey, I went ahead and changed the analysis for him because, again, he's the boss, he's the man. He, 99% of his decisions on analysis is pretty spot on. So I was like, okay, I disagree with you. I'm not going to pick up Rashawn Holmes, but I'll go ahead and change the blurb because you're the boss, you're the man. I understand. We can't all be right all the time. So, but I kind of went off on that little tidbit, but it's just kind of fun sometimes how you can be wrong. Even I can be wrong. I could not make the playoffs because I draft whoever in the first round that ends up sucking. So no matter what, you're never out of it. And no matter how good you are, you're never that good because you're wrong a lot of the times. And that's the fun of it. It wouldn't be fun if you're right all the time. Anyway, current standings, break them down. I'm in first place. Happy to be there. Got lucky in some areas. My draft, honestly, I felt like I had an amazing draft. Just every one of my picks was a hit. Getting Blake Griffin late in the fourth round, phenomenal. Getting Ben Simmons in the fifth round, huge. I took a big risk there just because I sort of felt that he wasn't going to perform like your average rookie because he'd spent a year basically being an NBA player without having to play. So I had a feeling he was going to come out a lot stronger than most rookies come out. Obviously, drafted Giannis. He was a big target of mine from the beginning. So McCollum was a safe pick. Anyway, I don't want to go into my draft too much, but I'm number one. Ben Fischel is number 2 and ahead of the out for the season division, and he's come a long way. It's his second year in the league. Last year, he made some pretty risky picks, taking Rajon Rondo pretty early. I'd have to go back and check what other ones he picked early. But Ben has made a big leap in his second year. He went through that rookie wall his first year, just kind of learning who's valuable, who's not. Because typically when you come in, it's your first year, you just more know names, right? You don't necessarily know someone who's coming into playing fantasy for the first time isn't going to think Rashawn Holmes is valuable. Because first of all, you never heard of him. Second of all, yeah, you never heard of him really. I mean, you only know his impact on the court in terms of a real life perspective. Where from fantasy, you're like Rashawn Holmes, that guy's super valuable, because he has this stat set or does this. So Ben made a big adjustment his second year, drafted a lot differently, a lot safer, I think, for the most part, getting a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge. So props to Ben for basically being number 2 right now. The season's not fully done yet. We still have to finish out this week, so seeding could change a little bit, but he looks pretty locked in for that number 2 spot. Number 3 would be Mr. Blake Richardson, I believe. Actually, I'm not 100% sure on that due to, let me check the seedings because, nope, actually, Mr. Brant is number 3. He's actually got one more category victory. Mr. Brant always does well, very consistent, has won 2 titles in the league, not surprised at all. Definitely built his team around steals. So, number 3, Mr. Brant. Number 4, Mr. Blake Richardson, who he actually thought he was going to actually end up having to be in that play-in game, but turns out I guess he did enough that last week to jump up to number 4. And Mr. Blake has definitely built himself around the double-double category, which is why him losing Kevin Love was a pretty big loss. Jimmy Butler, great pick. Chris Paul, great pick. He took a risk on Embiid early. That's paid off, I'd say, for the most part. So Mr. Blake Richardson in 4th place. 5th place would be Mr. Brad. Now, Brad, I'm not surprised at all that he's in 5th. I could definitely have seen him being top 2 or 3 as well. He has done a lot of fantasy leagues for a long time. I know he's really big into baseball and fantasy baseball. He was actually describing to me his fantasy baseball league and how it works, and I was like, my jaw dropped because the way they run it is essentially just as much work as a real GM runs their league, the way they have it all set up with keepers, and there's contracts as well, and players get more expensive to keep as the years go on, and just crazy, but really cool, really fascinating stuff. So not surprised at all to see him right in there in the mix for a potential run at the championship. I mean, he's got Anthony Davis, who top 3 player in our format. Rudy Gobert is a monster. Lowry. Hopefully Aaron Gordon will come back healthy, and the Magic won't just sit him out because they're already out of it. Just built really well. Low turnovers, aside from Devin Booker, which is a little high there, but he's got as good a chance as anybody. Number 6, this one's pretty surprising actually, because Miguel was in first place for most of the year, and just recently kind of dropped down. Now he's actually in that playing game with Armin, and I could definitely tell that Miguel built around low turnovers, built around high steals, built around 3-pointers, good percentages. We had a good battle early on in our early matchup, and it was definitely a race for steals. It was like an arms race for steals. I remember I had to pick up Thabo Cephalosha just because I needed steals against Miguel because he had such good steals, and then his steals to turnover were good, and then we were battling in turnovers as well. So I was like, well, Cephalosha can't do anything else, but he can get steals, which is going to help me in 3 categories, and he doesn't turn the ball over. So really surprised to see him down there in that 6th spot. I really thought we'd be fighting till the very end for that number 1 seed. But I'm looking at his team right now. I'm trying to think what went wrong, where the drop-off was. And I think just some injury stuff piled up. I know he had to drop LeVert recently. He had to drop Hollis Jefferson recently because they keep getting hurt. So hard to explain that one. I know Jermichael Green got hurt for a while as well. I know Joe Ingles kind of went on a pretty hard streak there where he was struggling. He's started to bounce back a little bit. I know Avery Bradley was hurt for him. So, but he is obviously still fighting to stay in the playoffs. And taking a look at that matchup right now, ooh man, 5-5-1 right now is the matchup between Armin and Miguel for that final sixth spot in the playoffs. The categories look really close. Field goal percentage is close. 3-pointers could go either way. Assists could go either way. Looks like double-doubles could go either way. Points could go either way. So that's going to be a really interesting battle to watch. And that brings us to our next contender, which is Armin, who is finished in the 7th seed, and he's obviously fighting in to get in that last playoff spot. But like I said, if Armin can win this matchup, he's definitely got the team that can run the table. So I would not be surprised to see him in it. Now, number 8 in our standings, that is going to go to, looks like, Connor. And Connor, pretty unlucky at the end there. I think he could have been in that game fighting for that 6th and 7th seed, but big injury, lost to DeMarcus Cousins. That was a huge loss for him. And just couldn't recover. I was actually looking at Connor's team. I was shocked that he was even that low because I think Steph Curry is unreal. Andre Drummond is having an all-star season. He's got Bradley Beal, who's been, one of his better seasons. Dwight Howard has been a monster, just double machine, 1.7 blocks per game. Maybe it was a team build issue. Someone like Curry, super efficient. Someone like DeMarcus, the opposite of that. Maybe there was some. You look at Howard, kills your 3-throw percentage, whereas Curry, So I think maybe that was a little bit more of a team build issue, where there was a lot of amazing talent, but if you don't have the right team build, then you're going to have stats that counteract that are going to hurt you. If I was Connor, I probably would have looked to trade away Dwight Howard just because that 3-throw percentage can kind of kill you there, and he's otherwise has pretty good 3-throw shooters for the most part. So that kind of hurts him in that category. Might even cost him that category on a week-to-week basis. And obviously, he's got a lot of guys who are not high turnover guys, but then again, DeMarcus Cousins can kill you in the turnover category. You can have eight turnovers in one game, and then that hurts your steals to turnover. That hurts multiple categories that could cost you. So maybe it was more of a team build issue, and that's why he's not going to be in the playoffs this year. But I think definitely could win the consolation, no doubt, and win that extra pick in the lottery. Next up would be Bro Neal, who I'd say had a pretty good season for the most part, pretty good draft. Victor Oladipo was a huge steal in the draft. He was able to get Dario Saric off waivers. Dario's been amazing after a rough start. Kevin Durant's been Kevin Durant. Marc Gasol's been Marc Gasol. Serge Ibaka's been Serge Ibaka. I thought he actually made a pretty good trade with Tyler at the beginning of the year. I didn't think it was good at first because Trevor Ariza is just so valuable in our format with the steals, the lack of turnovers. But thanks to the Kawhi Leonard injury, Pau Gasol has maintained pretty high value. So looking at your team, Maroniel, I'm pretty surprised to see you not in the playoffs with just the consistency of the guys you had. And again, maybe it's a team build issue. Maybe you just had guys that kind of counteracted each other at different spots. But pretty surprised looking at your roster that you're not in the playoffs. So I think definitely can win that consolation. So be going for that. Next up on the standings is Mr. Brent Pierce. Brent, again, surprised to see you at the bottom. You had such a good year last year where you took over a team and basically turned it around, flipped it around, and basically almost upset me in the first round. You could have run the table with that team last year. I think what I noticed when you drafted is you drafted a lot of young players, which isn't really good for our format, really. Guys like D'Angelo Russell, guys like Lonzo Ball, Willie Cauley-Stein. Those guys are just unproven and inconsistent because they're so young. So I remember thinking during the draft, just thinking, wow, Brent's taking a lot of risk here with some of these young guys who, I mean, you don't really know what you're going to get for sure. There's definitely some safer options out there. Obviously, had some injury bad luck with Hassan Whiteside being out for a while with a knee bruise. You had Gallinari out for a while, but that's no surprise. It's Gallinari. As much as I love him, he just can't stay on the court. D'Angelo Russell got hurt for him. Lonzo Ball's been hurt for the last few weeks, so definitely some injury bad luck. I know James Johnson as well was out for a while, so kind of a combination of maybe a little too risky during that draft, and then just the injuries piled up, and that seemed to be what kind of cost you a chance at the title this year, Brent. So, but honestly, your team looks great, and you made great pickups. Kyle Kuzma, I mean, amazing pickup. TJ Warren was an amazing pickup. I remember being really bummed out that I wasn't able to grab him. So, really good work all the way around. Just maybe grab some safer players in that next year's draft and hope for luck on the injury front. That's really a big part of winning fantasy, is just getting lucky with injuries. I've been probably one of the luckiest people in the league with not having to deal with too many injuries, knock on wood. And obviously I tried to stay away from guys like, Gallinari and guys that I thought were going to get hurt. But at the same time, there's a big luck factor to any fantasy sport, regardless. So Brent, still try to win that consolation. You'll get an extra pick, not an extra pick, but an extra chance in that draft lottery to get one of those top picks and snag a Durant, snag a Westbrook, snag a Giannis. So keep fighting. I encourage you guys to keep fighting for that consolation. Get that extra chance in the lottery that could really win you the league next year. So you get the top 3 pick and you're able to get a Kevin Durant, a Steph Curry, build around them. You could win the title next year. So I think it's very valuable. Next up, the last two are Scott and Hassam. Scott, I thought actually he drafted pretty well. I remember that Kristaps pick we all thought was a little high, but then he was having a monster season. Unfortunately, that injury just recently was devastating. I was watching that live and just saw him. I thought it was just a hyperextension at first, based on the way it was, but the way he just grabbed at it as soon as he fell down, I went, oh no. So I feel awful for you, Scott, that happened. Thought honestly you made some good pickups during the year. Picking up Will Barton, I thought was a fantastic pickup. Making that trade for John Collins, I thought was really good. You made some really good pickups. Sabonis had a really phenomenal year. Not phenomenal in terms of, compared to last year. 12 and 8 is solid numbers for a late round guy. I think you actually might have got him off waivers. I'm not sure, but I think overall, you just had some guys underperform. You had Yusuf Nurkic, who underperformed. You made a couple trades. I remember you had Booker. You traded him. I'll have to look and see who you originally drafted to see if there's anything. Now, Scott, my one criticism of you is that I do see a lot of Homer-esque picks in you. What I mean is guys that really shouldn't be owned that you're owning because they're on the Kings. I know you had Garrett Temple for a little bit. I know you've had Frank Mason for a bit. You even have Fox now. And even Fox now, as well as he's playing, is still kind of detrimental in a lot of categories like turnover and field goal percentage, and doesn't get you threes. And I would say, as much as you love the Kings, you may want to lay off the homer picks. That's one thing in fantasy that you learn right away is if you're a homer in fantasy, unless your team's like, unless your favorite team is the Golden State Warriors and you get all Warriors players, for the most part, if you try to be a homer, you're going to lose. Because, especially if your team is the Sacramento Kings, who just have been abysmal. There's hope, but they've been abysmal. So, my advice to you, Scott, just lay off the homer picks, my man. I know you want Frank Mason on your team. I know you want De'Aaron Fox, but you might have to let him go if you want to make the playoffs next year and contend for a fantasy title. But otherwise, thought you did really well and made some great pickups, and I wish you luck in that consolation round. Lastly, Hassam, I might even add in some violin music right here. Just bad luck all the way around. That's all I can say. No one would have predicted the Kawhi Leonard saga that happened. No one would have predicted. Who else did you have go up for the year? Well, you drafted Zach LaVine, so that's on you. Which was a smart move at the time because, hey, you got that IR spot, why not stash a guy like that? That's what I did last year with Drew Holiday. Took me to the title, so I thought that was honestly a good move. But you just got, I think the two unlucky ones were the Mike Conley. That was huge. That was unexpected. You didn't see that one coming. Kawhi Leonard, that's huge. That's unexpected. So that's two big losses right there. But obviously you had Reggie Jackson, and Reggie's been known to be injury prone, so you kind of dug your own grave with that one. And then the Zach LaVine one. I thought the only thing with your team, Hassan, I thought that you probably should have dropped Mike Conley a lot earlier, just knowing the situation that the Grizzlies were in as a team that was so far out of the playoffs, and really an Achilles injury is such a serious thing for players. I really thought that you held on to Mike Conley a little bit too long, and that maybe you should have even looked to trade LaVine even sooner before things got bad to the point where you didn't have a chance at the playoffs. So, but otherwise, you just had bad luck. I mean, honestly, you lose a first-round pick like Leonard. There's really not a whole lot you can do to recover from that. I remember, I think the one year I didn't make the playoffs in fantasy, I had Kevin Love in the first round, and I think he hurt himself doing knuckle push-ups, broke his hand, and then came back and then got hurt again. So he pretty much not only was hurt, but then I had to hold on to him because it wasn't just hey, you tore your ACL, you're done. It was like, oh, well, he's kind of coming back, and then he came back and played a little bit. Now he's hurting. So you're kind of, not only do you lose that guy, but now you're wasting a roster spot on that person all year long, which is even basically a double whammy. And so that's what happened with Leonard, right? He goes out, you can't cut him. It's not like he tore his ACL. You got to hang on to him. Sort of comes back, hurt again. He's gonna sort of maybe come back whenever. So you got screwed big time with the Leonard thing, and I feel really bad about that. So I think chalk up this year to bad luck. Come back next year strong. You still have a chance in that consolation round as well to get that extra chance in the lottery next year to hopefully grab a Kevin Durant or Curry or Giannis at the top end of the draft. And obviously just pray that they stay healthy, because that's, again, you lose a first-round pick and not a whole lot you can do to recover from that. So I just wanted to break down the standings and kind of, I guess you could call that segment, advice from Tim on your team, and why I thought you did bad or good. So anyway, good luck to the teams that are currently in the playoffs. Good luck to the teams fighting for that consolation round. I am even considering, because part of our payouts are $15 each for the division winners. I care about this league a lot, and most of all, I care about you guys having fun. I'm considering, I'm not 100% on it, but I'm considering actually putting my $15 that I would get from being a division winner and putting that up for the consolation winner. I really believe in this league being fun, and I think that incentives make things a lot more fun. And I want you guys in the consolation round not to feel like that the season's over, not to feel like, oh well, who cares? It's over. I have nothing to play for. Not only do you have that extra lottery chance, which could help you land a top 5 pick next year in the draft, but I'm considering throwing in my $15 to add a little incentive for you guys, because I want you guys to have fun. I want you guys to keep trying. I know that the playoffs are a little longer than they have been in years past, because the semifinals and the finals are going to be 2 weeks long, there's going to be about 4 or 5 weeks of playoffs, where if you're in the consolation and you don't feel like you're playing for anything, that's 5 weeks that you don't get to have fun doing fantasy. And I want you guys to have fun. I want you guys to keep trying till the end. So I'll consider that. I'll let you know for sure whether or not I'm going to do that, hopefully by the time that the consolation round starts. So please don't give up. Please keep trying. Win that lottery chance. I know I keep saying it over and over again. I'm beating a dead horse here. Have fun with it. See how good you can make your team in the next 5 weeks, regardless of what incentive there is or isn't. Okay? I know easier for me to say because I'm in first, but I've been out of the playoffs before, and I want to keep trying to the end, and I know sometimes we need incentives. So keep trying. Keep trying. All right, this next segment, I'm calling this Who Got Lucky? Who got lucky? Right? Obviously, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Fully acknowledge that. So who got lucky? Who drafted a guy and then another player got hurt or the value shot up And let's be real, you didn't plan for this. You didn't expect this to happen. You got lucky. Okay? My number one you got lucky player is LaMarcus Aldridge from Ben Fischel. Because you didn't know Kawhi Leonard, this was going to happen. LaMarcus Aldridge last year in our format, top 50. Right now, top 15. It's a huge jump. And honestly, a big part of that, no Kawhi Leonard. Major usage spike for LaMarcus. He's got to do more. He's got to be more. He's got to score more. He's got to board more. He's got to play more. So Ben, you got lucky. Okay, with LaMarcus. Number two, you got lucky player goes to Enes Kanter. Blake Richardson took Enes with the last pick in his draft. Last year he was ranked as 133rd in our format. He was really in a log jam, right? You have Kristaps Porzingis, who actually played a lot of center last season. You have Willie Hernangomez, who is a young player for them. You have Kyle O'Quinn, who is a solid player. You got Joakim Noah. I mean, there's a reason he got drafted as one of the last round picks, is because you're thinking, okay, well, he's probably going to do what he did with the Thunder. He'll have his 20 to 25 minute role off the bench as a scorer, and that's really it. And he'll be maybe a top 100 if I'm lucky. He's the 37th ranked player in our format. You got lucky, Blake Richardson. You got lucky. Number three, who got lucky player? And this one, again, Blake Richardson. Taj Gibson. Who would have thought Mr. like 12-6 off the bench, everywhere he's gone in his career, was ranked 121st in our format last season. Playing for the Thunder, so obviously he got traded halfway through. So split teams. Went from 121 to 24 this year. 24. Blake Richardson, you got lucky. Okay? You got lucky. But hey, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And the reason for that, obviously, is he got the starting job. He's been coming off the bench his entire career, and now he got to be the starting power forward, and has just been insanely efficient. 57% from the field. Barely any turnovers. 1.1 turnovers per game. Almost a steal a game, too. So, wow. You got lucky. Number four, you got lucky player goes to Lou Williams. Because Hassam, it's Lou Williams, right? Everywhere he's been in his career, he's the guy who comes off the bench who scores 15 to 20 points. And that's his MO throughout his career. And all of a sudden, thanks to some injuries to the Clippers, Patrick Beverley, Milos Teodosic was out for a while. Austin Rivers has been out for a while. Now all of a sudden, Lou Williams is like an MVP candidate with the numbers he's putting up. He went from, 75th last year to 47, so not a huge jump, but no one was expecting this out of Lou Williams. So, Hassam, you got lucky. Okay? Lastly, this person gets 2 mentions. Mr. Scott. Scott, you picked up Jaylen Brown the day before Gordon Howard snapped his leg in half. So unless you had some premonition, you were like, oh, Jaylen, he's young. He'll probably get, some minutes off the bench. Why not take a shot on him? Now he's a starting shooting guard all season long. You got lucky. Okay? Your other player, because you get 2 for this segment, Mr. Scott, is Will Barton. Now, when Will Barton got dropped from Connor's team, I was like, what the heck? Why did Connor just drop Will Barton? Will Barton is a solid freaking player for the Nuggets with a defined role on a playoff team. And guess who was first on the waiver order that week? Mr. Scott. So, of course, you put in a claim, and you got him. But you got lucky. Okay. So those are your top 5 you got lucky players. Because sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Honorable mention, recently, Michael Beasley. His value just skyrocketed because of Kristaps Porzingis going out with the ACL. Miguel Delgadillo, you got lucky. And that might even be what honestly put you in the playoffs. That injury could send Miguel to the playoffs, honestly, because of how close him and Armin's matchup is. So that is a stroke of luck. I will put myself in here. Right now, I feel like a pretty lucky man because John Wall is hurt, and Otto Porter, with no John Wall, is a stud, baby. Killing it without John Wall. Usage goes up way higher. Points, field goals, free throws go up. He's even dishing in some assists now. Still being a low turnover guy. I'm a pretty fortunate man that John Wall's out. And also, Bradley Beal, owned by Connor, is also seeing quite a usage increase without Mr. John Wall. So we are both very fortunate with those picks. So now, my other draft picks I don't really consider lucky. I don't consider my Blake Griffin pick lucky. I don't consider my Ben Simmons pick lucky. I thought those were very calculated moves on my part. Darren Collison, I feel like I had some calculated moves. I had a specific team build in mind. I wanted to build around efficiency. I wanted guys who were guards who could shoot a high field goal percentage, who were low turnovers, and high steals. So that's why I drafted CJ McCollum. He led the league in field goal percentage as a shooting guard who shoots a lot and hits threes. Gary Harris, again, high field goal percentage guy, low turnover, high steal. Picked up Frukamino, who's that same mold. I really wanted the do-it-all forwards this time because out-of-position stats are very valuable. So that's why I went after Giannis. That's why I went after Nikola Jokic in that trade for Simmons. That's why I drafted Blake Griffin. I wanted the do-it-all forwards, the forwards that can score, can dish the rock, can rebound, can contribute in more than one area, right? Because Blake Griffin's essentially my point guard, the way that he dishes out. Giannis is another point guard, essentially. So now I don't have to actually have a ton of point guards on my roster because they are my point guards for me. So out-of-position stats are huge, and that's what I went with. I went with the efficiency, out-of-position stats were my two highest priority things going into the draft, and it paid off. So now, lastly, for the last few minutes here, I wanted to break down some of the trades that went down at the deadline, try to give you my analysis on what kind of fantasy impact that's going to have, as well as real-life impact. I'm going to jump right in it. First, the big trade. Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance for Isaiah Thomas, Channing Frye, and a 2018 first-round picks from the Cavs. Jordan Clarkson probably has about the same amount of value as he had on the Lakers. It's kind of a backup point guard to George Hill. About the same. Larry Nance, the jury is out on him because I do think he's going to be more valuable than he has been on the Lakers because I do think he will get more minutes on the Cavs because they're so defensively deficient, really. He can play two positions. He can play center. He can play power forward. So I still think he's going to have more value than he did on the Lakers, but I am concerned because you have Tristan Thompson there already at center. Once Kevin Love comes back, although Kevin Love shouldn't be back before our playoffs are over. And LeBron could be pushed down and play a lot more 4 as well. So I'm sort of hanging on to him in my league because I do think that he's going to have more value than he did with LA with the logjam of Julius Randle and Brook Lopez and Kyle Kuzma all kind of scrapping for minutes. I think he's going to see more minutes. And honestly, he's great for our format. The steals, the lack of turnovers, the high field goal percentage are incredible. So I'm not dropping him just yet. Isaiah Thomas probably gains some value. I would assume on a higher pace Laker team. He's not going to start, but he should get 25, 30 minutes off the bench, and he's going to get to shoot a lot. He's going to rack up a lot more stats because, well, the pace is going to be so much faster in LA. They don't really play defense, and obviously defense doesn't get played when he's on the floor. Channing Frye's not even going to play at all, most likely. So his value kind of dies. And then that first round pick, it won't be that great. Obviously, the Cavs will be high up there in the Eastern Conference, so the pick's not going to be great. But first round pick's first round pick. So overall, I thought it was a great trade for both teams, really. Only unfortunate thing is that the Cavs had to trade Isaiah so low. That's their loss. They traded high for Isaiah, and now they're having to trade him low because his value is just diminished so much because of the huge numbers defensively that he's just killing them, and then he's still inefficient shooting, and so unfortunately they had to sell him pretty high. But honestly, I thought this was a good trade. Another one, Rodney Hood and George Hill traded to the Cavs. The Jazz got Jay Crowder, Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose got cut. Kings get Joe Johnson, Iman Shumpert, and a second-round pick. Most likely, we're going to cut Joe Johnson. He'll be in the buyout market. Probably going to keep Shump, but we're obviously hoping that he's going to opt out, so we have a little bit more cap flexibility next year. But seeing how much money he's going to get, he might opt in, which would be unfortunate because he has no room in the rotation. We have too many young guys, too many guys in that backcourt that need time. He's not going to see very much time at all, I don't think. Big steal for me is Jay Crowder, who I think there were a lot of reports that he was really a locker room problem in Cleveland, that he was not happy, that he was not really sure of his role, that he wasn't really touching the ball much, and was not really playing hard on the defensive end because he was frustrated. So he goes to a much better situation in Utah, where I think that him paired with Rudy Gobert, if he plays power forward again, can space the floor, if he can, play defense again, if he's happy, him and Gobert as defenders, that's a really good defensive team getting even better defensively and even being able to space the floor better on offense with Crowder. So I think that's a huge win for the Jazz. I think that's a huge under the radar win. George Hill, obviously, his value is going to go up in Cleveland. He wasn't very happy in Sacramento. You could tell by the way he played that he didn't really like sharing with De'Aaron Fox, and he knew that he wasn't really sort of wanted there, to be honest. We didn't really want him there. I mean, Rodney Hood, I think his value goes up. He was kind of coming off the bench again in Utah, and right now he's probably better than J.R. Smith, who's had an awful year. So I think his value actually will improve on the Cavaliers as well. Dwayne Wade back to the Heat. Not obviously, it was more of a just they gave him away, to be real. I mean, a lightly protected future second-round pick is not much. Wade, however, I think is really going to hurt Goran Dragic and also Tyler Johnson, because we saw in the past when Dwayne Wade and Dragic were together how frustrating it was to own Dragic, because Wade took away so many ball handling opportunities and ran the offense so much, and I remember being a real struggle as a Dragic owner. Now, Wade isn't quite the same player he was on the Heat as before. He'll probably be coming off the bench, probably in 20, 25 minutes, so he's not going to hurt him as much as he did in the past when he was playing 30-plus minutes, but I do think that this is a slight hit to Dragic, who, of course, once I dropped him, has been on an absolute tear. So dumb of me, of course. I dropped him because I honestly didn't think he was having a good year. He was hurting me with lots of turnovers. He was not getting steals. He was hurting me in field goal percentage and free-throw percentage. It was really a bad fit for my team, so I dropped him. But since then, of course, he's had multiple 30-point games. He's actually getting steals again. So you're welcome, Mr. Brandt. Have fun with Dragic. Dragic screwed me, even though I'm a fan of his. Next one, Elfrid Payton to the Suns. This one was pretty much Payton's becoming a free agent, and the Magic were going to lose him anyway. They wanted to go in a different direction. They're actually better with him off the floor. He kills the spacing because he can't shoot. Still a solid defender, so this is a great pickup for the Suns. You don't give up much, a second-round pick, and you kind of give Elfrid Payton a fresh start in Phoenix. So I think it's going to be an upgrade for him fantasy-wise, because right now the Suns are hurting for just quality players. I mean, they got blown out by 50 points to the Spurs. They just don't have players. It's like a college-level team. So it's sad. So great move for them, and I think the Magic kind of had to take what they can get, really, and just you got to cut your losses at some point and just say, we screwed up. We drafted the wrong guy. Cut our losses. Just because he's a high draft lottery pick doesn't mean you hang on to him. You admit you made a mistake and you move on, and that's what the Magic did. So I thought that was a smart move. Emmanuel Mudiay traded to the Knicks. I thought this was a great move for the Knicks. You get, again, a guy who is a high lottery pick who still has a lot of potential, who I really like. I was a fan of him coming out. I still think that he's going to be pretty good. Just young, just needs time to develop. He's just raw. And I thought the Nuggets, I'm a little disappointed that they only got Devin Harris. I mean, Devin Harris probably only has a couple years left in the league. Great for them to in a win now mode. Maybe I'm assuming they didn't want to pay Moutier when his contract comes up, and that was probably the reason. They didn't want to lose him for nothing, and there's not really minutes for him to really develop and show to like gain value to even be a higher traded value asset. You have to give him playing time, and there's just no way they can play him because they have too many good guards already. So thought the Nuggets kind of gave up a little too early, but maybe they didn't really have a choice. Most likely, they also got a second round pick from the Knicks. The Mavericks got Doug McDermott. Meh, his value's probably not going to change much. He's in a similar situation that he was in OKC. But a fresh start for him. You never know. That does wonders for players. Smaller trade, Dante Cunningham for Rashad Vaughn. No fantasy impact there. Rashad Vaughn's going to be stuck behind a lot of good guards in the Pelicans. And then Dante Cunningham might get a little bit of run, but has proven over the course of his career to really not be much of a asset, even when he does get big minutes. So nothing changes there. The Blazers trade Noah Vonleh to the Bulls. That's pretty much just they wanted to get under the luxury tax is the bottom line. They don't want to pay, because every year that you are over the luxury tax, it increases what you have to pay as far as the tax penalty. So they're basically like, we don't need Noah Vonleh. Ed Davis is playing great. We have Al-Farouq Aminu. We need cash and we need cap space. So peace out, Noah Vonleh. They got rights to some Milovan Rakovic, who I don't think is even going to play in the NBA ever. So another notable one, kind of the Raptors getting Malachi Richardson. The Kings getting Bruno Caboclo. I don't know if I'm saying that right at all. So when this trade first went through, I was mad because I actually still believe in Malachi Richardson. Had no idea who this Bruno guy even was. Apparently Miguel did, and he was ecstatic because he apparently loves this Bruno guy. I had no idea who the dude was. I still don't really know who he is, but then the reports came out that we were going to cut him and keep Papa G. But then other reports came out that we're actually cutting Papa G and we're going to stick with Bruno. So I'm happy with that. I mean, Papa G is another one of those situations where, yeah, he was a high draft pick, so you could use that as an excuse to hang on to him because, he was a high draft pick. But at the same time, sometimes you got to cut your losses and just admit you made a mistake, and cut a guy. You can't hang on to him just because they were a high lottery pick. Same thing in fantasy. If you draft a guy really high and he's a bust, at some point you got to cut your losses. You can't just hang on to him because you're mad that you didn't get the value that you drafted. You got to move on. Luke Babbitt traded back to the Heat for Okoro White. The Heat are cutting Okoro White, so he has no value. Luke Babbitt doesn't have a lot of value there either. He's sitting behind Olynyk and Bam, and just not gonna really have value there. Pistons get James Ennis, which is a nice little sneaky under the radar pick in real life. James Ennis is not going to have fantasy value. He's behind Reggie Bullock. He's behind Stanley Johnson. This is a great move for the Pistons, though, to get some depth. The Grizzlies get Bryce Johnson, who I got to watch him at Summer League, and I thought he was pretty phenomenal. I've been kind of watching him all year and waiting for him to get an opportunity. Hopefully he gets his opportunity this year with the Grizzlies out of playoff contention. Hopefully they'll throw him in there and see what he's got, so he could potentially have some value later on in the year. Bulls trade Jameer Nelson to the Pistons. I think this was a great move. Jameer Nelson is a veteran guy who Stan Van Gundy has had before when he was with the Magic. He had Jameer Nelson, so very familiarity there. I think he's be a great mentor for Chris Dunn, who's a young player. So they're going to hang on to Jameer, which I think is a smart move. And I believe that the Bulls, who got Willie Reed in that trade, have cut him already. So the Knicks trade Willie Hernangomez to the Hornets. Now this one was interesting because Willie Hernangomez goes to the same situation that he had in New York, sitting behind Cody Zeller, sitting behind Marvin Williams, sitting behind Frank Kaminsky, sitting behind Dwight Howard. Is he going to get playing time? I don't know. We'll see as the Hornets fall farther and farther out of playoff contention that maybe they'll play him towards the end. The Knicks got Johnny O'Bryant, young player, kind of just taking a chance on him. So see if that works out. There's some picks involved, but I'm skipping over some of the minor details that I don't think are as important. And I think those are actually all the main ones I was going to cover. overall, honestly, I think the biggest steal was Crowder to the Jazz. I think that's a huge steal for them. If he's the James Crowder that he was on the Celtics, man, that team that was already a defensive monster just got even better defensively and just got even better floor spacing. So kudos to them. The Cavs, we'll see if that works out for them. That's a lot of players to have to build chemistry with. I still honestly think the Raptors take the East this year. I know they get to the Eastern Conference Finals or close, but if you look at their team, and I followed them throughout the year, they have probably the best depth of any NBA team. I mean, DeLon Wright and Van Fleet, their two guards coming off the bench, could start on other teams. Norman Powell could start on another team. Like they're stacked, honestly. Their front court's not as strong, but their backcourt is absolutely loaded, and they have the best depth in the NBA. I think there's a good chance that they actually could come through. I don't think the Cavs are going to be that good even after this trade. I think the Celtics are finally kind of have hit their peak as far as how good they can be, and I think without Gordon Hayward and those young guys, I just don't see them getting there. I really think that the Raptors, this is if any year they're going to make it to the finals, it's this year. Unfortunately, they're probably still going to get smoked by the Golden State Warriors, but it'll be good for them to say they made it to the finals and make that fan base happy before they have to probably trade away some of these young guys that they have. And so that's my analysis of the trade deadline and your fantasy values. Again, I think the big pickups to look at, I picked up DJ Augustine because he's going to get 35, 40 minutes on a rebuilding team. That's fantasy